Ready to go. Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Supervisors for our September 25th, 2007 Board of Supervisors meeting. Roberta, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Long?
Here.
Supervisor Foy?
Here.
Supervisor Bennett?
Here.
Supervisor Flynn?
Yes.
Supervisor Parks?
Here. This morning we are fortunate to have Pastor Tommy Tsai from the Chinese Christian Church of Thousand Oaks here to give us our moment of affirmation. If you'd like to come up to the podium, thank you so much for coming all the way out to the West County.
Good morning to everyone here, and I'm very glad to be here again. Our life depends upon the relationship with the Creator and the creation. In the Creator, we live and move and have our being. Everything that God created, He saw it very good. God's mandate to us is to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over everything that moves upon the earth. Unfortunately, that we think we are the center of the universe, we exploit and use up the resources given by the Creator. In return, we harm ourselves, and from overuse of the resources, from pollution and destruction of our environment, our relationship with this planet has been broken and needs to be fixed. There are global warming, pandemic diseases, toxins in the water, and pollution in the air, etc. The earth that we live on and enjoy will not be the same in the future. It's sad to talk about this, but we cannot keep silence. We need to care about it, but we are not to be afraid of and avoid the situation. We need to act with faith. In faith, we have power to change, to conserve, to preserve, and to nurture our natural resources for ourselves and the generations to come. In faith, we have hope for the future. It's up to us to protect our land, our air and water, and subsequently our health. It's our responsibility and our chance to fix it right now. God loves us, and His creation is His gift for sustaining us. We need to love Him and appreciate His gift. Often we harm or destroy our environment and natural resources before we even know their values, and we don't know how to bring them back. Do not break things if you don't know how to put them back together. We need to restore and preserve the creation with love. Let's love one another and show our love in different ways that we care for our environment and natural resources, and eliminate or minimize harmful impact on them. In your project or in your daily life, you can demonstrate your love in action. Bible says that, and now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Paul Tillich, a theologian, said that often answers are in questions. If we can learn to love the natural world, we will protect it, and our future generation will enjoy the goodness that we enjoy right now. Then we are good caretakers of the earth. Let's have faith, hope, and love for our people, for our environment, and for our county. Every one of us and every project count. Our opinions and choices matter. These all affect others, and may we live our lives in good faith, with lively hope, and with sacrificing love. If we regard the Creator as the source and sustainer of all things, let's be faithful stewards without shame, who love our children and our grandchildren and care about the heritage we leave for them.
Thank you so much, Pastor. At this time, I know we have one comment card, so we'll go ahead to Carol Dean Williams and then do our Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to affirm this morning the fresh air that I feel in this room because I've been at City Hall, Ventura City Hall, dealing with the stale air. So the air here is very fresh. I want to affirm that.
And Supervisor Long, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Hand over heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second from Supervisor Bennett on the minutes of July 17th. Seeing no objections, and that will pass. And our next item is agenda review, and I turn it over to Mr. Johnston.
Madam Chair, there's only one adjustment to the agenda, and that is item number 20. Additional material was submitted to you and posted on the website.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other changes to the agenda that anyone would like to submit? Supervisor
Yes,
Flynn?
Madam Chair, number 11 on the consent agenda, I would like to have it continue for a week.
Okay. There's a request then to move the agenda then with Supervisor Flynn's request to continue item 11 for 1 week. Are there any questions?
I just want to check with the CEO. Are there any time issues related to item 11 in terms of?
If you'd like, we can have that. We'll continue it to later in the meeting to see whether we can continue it after we hear back from staff.
Let me just give you the reason. It says here that, I lost it. It says in the first page of the letter, 1, 2, 3, the paragraph, under background, it says our office subsequently.
Can you turn your microphone on?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Our office subsequently was granted an extension to provide sufficient time to consult with your board. I haven't had any consultation on that.
That
What it is you have to say about getting able to draw a conclusion. Such a conclusion is, just to give you one more example,
Well,
is objection to the expenditure of millions of dollars. That's one thing, but you can't draw the conclusion that simply the bacteria is caused naturally. There's some, but all. I mean, no conclusion like that can be drawn. Maybe there is. I just haven't seen any evidence.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Bennett?
Yeah, I'm going to suggest, if you read that the public comment period was extended until September 26th. If we don't take action today, we can't have our comments officially submitted during the public comment period. So I think that Supervisor Flynn can get the information that he needs. We can have this on again in another week. But I think we should still go forward with this action today, or else our comments won't be. If you look at the end of that first paragraph under background, it says the public comment period was extended to September 26th. So I think we shouldn't pull this item off of this agenda. We can do whatever Supervisor Flynn needs to get the information to him for next week.
Madam Chair, I will simply vote no on the item.
Okay.
Keep it on the agenda.
Got
I
it.
vote no on it for the reasons that I've stated. I have not
Okay.
received any. Let me state them. I have not received any consultation.
And Supervisor Flynn, what we'll do is we'll not approve it as part of the consent agenda in one motion. We'll go ahead and pull it. So shall we just go ahead and approve the agenda as reviewed, and then we'll go to the consent agenda, and you can go ahead and pull that item. Okay? So do we have a motion to accept the agenda? We have a motion.
Second.
And a second, and seeing no objection, that passes. Now we'll go to consent agenda items 10 through 17, and we'll go ahead and pull item 11 for discussion. Go ahead, Supervisor Flynn.
Right. The reason I I'll either vote no or ask that it be continued, is that I've received no consultation. I've received no consultation. Kitty Beach is in my district. I've received no consultation from the harbor director on this issue, nor from anyone else. And yet that is stated in the first page of the consent agenda, item number 11. That's number one. Number two, how one can draw such a conclusion as what I just read to you, but I want to make sure it's on the record. Finally, on the first paragraph, continued paragraph on page 2, finally, staff feels strongly that this board needs to express its objection to the expenditure of millions of dollars, that's fine to say that, and public funds to remediate naturally occurring bacteria. There's no way you can draw that conclusion. At least I haven't seen any evidence at all, and I would imagine that would come from consultation.
Madam Chair, Christy Madden from our office is here. We'd be happy to discuss it right now.
Let's do it.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. What we're bringing before you today is a compilation of comments that were put together by all of the county agencies who are involved in the management and administration of issues at Kitty Beach. So what this represents are comments from our Environmental Health Department, the Public Works Agency, Watershed Protection District, and the Harbor Department. This specific comment here is in response to our DNA study, which, if you'll see farther down on the agenda, concluded that 71% of the bacteria at Kitty Beach and 60% of the bacteria at Hobie Beach were from avian sources, which is a naturally occurring source of bacteria. We're not suggesting that we not continue working on eliminating non-natural sources of bacteria, and we have been working quite diligently to do that. What we're objecting to is addressing naturally occurring sources of bacteria at the beach, and what we are asking the regional board to do is to look at what's called a natural source exclusion approach to dealing with this TMDL. What they have recommended is using an open ocean, Leo Carrillo Beach, as the reference beach, which is our benchmark and our standard. Because an open ocean beach is so different than an enclosed marine environment, we're recommending that we use the natural source exclusion, which to date has not been implemented by the regional board.
Yeah, I still would have to see those studies, but I think that when you consider, this is under discussion, right?
Yes, please go forward.
When you consider the fact that the drainage, red line channel, as they're called, that comes down Channel Islands Boulevard, goes into the harbor. There's been some effort to clean that, what goes into the harbor. Mm-hmm. Now that's had an effect on the tests at Kitty Beach. Kitty Beach is showing up better now than it has in a long time. So I think that it might be due to what's happening in that channel, and that cleaner water is coming into the harbor. And if that's the case, then we've got something to work with. So I would request that it be continued. If not, I'll have to vote for it because I haven't seen any of the evidence that you're talking about. And let me ask you, did you consult with the other board members?
No.
Then why do we say that in here then, in the letter? On the first paragraph, let me read it to you. Our office subsequently requested and was granted an extension to provide sufficient time to consult with your board regarding the significant policy, jurisdictional, and financial implications. That's never been done.
Well, it's being done today. That's what that was in reference to.
I'm sorry, but that's not being done before today's letter is on. That's one of my strong objections.
Under the Brown Act, I think you have to consult here in this room.
One of my strong objections, I did not have any time to prepare and read the studies that you're talking about.
Madam Chair?
I know Supervisor Long will go next. You're done, Supervisor.
Anyway,
Long.
I don't want to argue about it. I'm just going to vote
Okay.
no.
That's exactly.
And I would like my comments when you go before the regional water board to be made to them.
And you would like a copy of the report. Apparently, you're not aware that 71% of the bacteria at Kitty Beach is avian. That's something you need to learn and read about.
I do know we've wasted $700,000 trying to do something, but trying to do something was ineffective
Okay.
because of the way we're trying to do something.
Okay.
Anyway, that's my comment. I vote no.
Got it. Supervisor Long, you have
Well,
a comment on this?
I would say a couple of things. One, this board has been very involved with TMDL issues. I personally know of 4 letters that were carried forward regarding TMDLs, certainly in the Cayugas and the Santa Clara Valley watersheds. Referencing the report on Kitty Beach and Hobie Beach that came from Larry Walker Associates was a report that was brought to this board and fully discussed, agreed or disagreed as to conclusions that were drawn from the analysis, but it was fully discussed by this board. And in fact, we talked at that time about birds and other natural resources and trying to think of creative ways to, as I believe, looking particularly at Kitty Beach, what to do regarding that. So I think, one, we need to be on the record regarding TMDLs because of the variety of impacts that this has from the upstream end of it all the way to our beaches. And I think that I know specific consultations on this components of these items have certainly occurred as we've all worked in our respective jurisdictions on the issues related to TMDL and how we're going to manage them in the watershed. So that's just my comments on the item.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
And let's go in order, and we'll go to Supervisor Bennett, then Supervisor Flynn.
Yeah, thank you. Number one, I certainly don't think that anybody could read this letter and suggest that we don't want to continue to make improvements. We have made improvements, and we will continue to make improvements. I think what we all want is the same thing that we heard at the meeting with the regional board that just took place a couple of days ago, which is that we want common sense applied here. And the public asked for the DNA studies. And we accommodated that request of the public for the DNA studies. Those DNA studies have been available for a long period of time for everybody to review. And in fact, we had the DNA studies information presented to us, and we've known about the DNA studies for a long period of time. I think one of the things that we find is public asks for the DNA studies, and then when the DNA studies don't give the answer that some people were looking for, which is they wanted to have something they could use to sort of bang away. Instead, when the DNA studies indicated that it was basically the birds and the bird droppings, they're the local birds right there in the harbor, well, that was harder to create as much of a target to go and attack. Then suddenly people aren't as supportive of the DNA studies. But we have a DNA study that says 71% of that bacteria is there, and it's a common sense logical thing to ask the regional board for that. In terms of meeting with all the board members, this is exactly how we do it. The Brown Act says we have this here. This item appeared on Thursday in our agenda, and that's when we're supposed to do our work, which is to read these things and say, hey, I'd like to see this study before I get to the boardroom on Tuesday, particularly when the very beginning of the letter says we have to have our comment period ends by the 26th. If you want to make some additional comment, you certainly need to have that done by the 26th. So I think it's incumbent upon us to ask for that information between Thursday and now. Finally, and I'll wait till I want to make sure Ms. Madden hears this final one. And finally, I would like to emphasize that we're going to make a motion here, and I believe this motion is going to pass to support staff's letter. When that passes, I think that our board, like our policy should always be, our board has one message that goes to the regional board, and that is whatever it is the motion that passes by this board. Our staff should not be delivering a minority report. If somebody wants to make their own minority report, certainly Supervisor Flynn has done that many times in the past and is free to do that. But our staff shouldn't be delivering that message. The message should be the message that comes from the collective action of the board. So I would want to emphasize that that our motion will
Madam
include.
Chair, I still have comments.
If I could.
Let's not
I'm
interrupt.
sorry,
You
but
are
I have
next.
comments before the motion is made.
And you are next.
Okay.
And
Thank you
so
very
I want to
much.
make sure that our.
What I want to do.
I'm sorry, we
And
have,
I have
next,
the
I mean,
floor still, Mr.
after
Flynn.
he's done
What?
talking, when Supervisor Bennett's done talking, then you can talk. And then I know Mr. Johnston wants to talk, and I do too.
So I will want to make sure that our motion includes that staff is directed to send the one consistent message that comes from the majority of the board. Thank you very much.
Now it's your turn.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, one thing we have to look at, very important thing, it's been talked about so many times at the voting center, the BISC, is look how we're going to be able to serve our children at the BISC. And I'm saying to you, if the water at Kitty Beach can be cleaned up and it's headed that direction, why not continue to do that? Why send a report that's negative to the Regional Water Quality Control Board when we have thousands of children in the Oxnard, Saticoy, El Rio area that love to use that beach? In fact, they continue to do so even though the water doesn't meet the state standards. So we're kind of contradicting ourselves there. Last week, we heard a report from Jeff Pratt about runoff, contamination from runoff. And before that plan is even before us, really, the state water or the regional water plan, we're taking a position here. The water that runs down Channel Islands Boulevard also runs down Ventura Road. If you look, as you drive south on Ventura Road and look to your right, you'll see a major channel. That major channel is draining the very surfaces that we talked about last week and the regional board is addressing. It takes water, surface water, runoff from Oxnard primarily. It dumps into the Channel Islands Red Line Channel, down Ventura Road, then down Channel Islands Boulevard. You'll see it as you drive by. And that carries the water. Well, the water, that's the kind of water we need to try to clean up in some effective, efficient, and low-cost way. But to take a position like this is an affront to the people of Ventura County. It's an affront to the people who live in Port Hueneme, Oxnard, Saticoy, El Rio, and anyone who's able to ride a bicycle to that beach. So we're doing something that's anti-youth, anti-teenager. We're taking a position on an item that is very serious. Mr. Johnson, you're a CEO, you're not a board member. Very serious. And I really object to it. I object to being told that staff consulted. They didn't come over and talk with me about this letter. That's what it says, what it implies. So, Madam Chair, my vote, if there is a motion, will be no.
Okay, thank you. And I know Mr. Johnston and Supervisor Long also want to comment. So, Mr. Johnston, you want to go first?
Well, maybe I can clear some of this up. Seems to be somebody's confused. It may be me, but let me ask this question. One, is there any problem with recrafting the letter to remove the offensive language of having consulted?
Well,
in particular? Well,
staff's concern is that originally this TMDL was proposed to be adopted by the regional board while your board was on summer recess. Our office wrote to the LA Regional Board, said we want time to bring this to our Board of Supervisors given all of the significant policy implications. So
but the opportunity is to consult now.
Correct.
But Supervisor Flynn seems to be offended by the way the letter was crafted. This is really about local control. There is nothing that is being suggested that says that your board can't clean up the beach. and we would support you in any way you wish to go about that. What this, as my understanding is, this is attempting to protect the County of Ventura and the taxpayers and your board from having a broad set of standards set up in advance with penalties, requiring you to spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on a solution that no one is sure is even out there or how to go about it. But your board has the right, even though the permit is maybe provides for this exemption, your board still has the right to impose as strict a standard as you wish here locally. If this comes in the form of a permit, I believe we would then be subject to sanctions if we didn't achieve whatever it is that they determine is in the permit. And we believe, and most of the technical people believe, that you're not going to be able to measure up to what was originally proposed. And so it is suggested that you get some modification to it, and then you can work as hard as you want on getting the beach clean and for the bicyclists and all the things that Supervisor Flynn has brought up and all the children. This is not intended to say that no one wants to clean the beach or would prevent us from cleaning the beach.
And I might point out that I think with the recommendation that staff is suggesting here, we actually accomplish what Supervisor Flynn wants. What we're asking for is a natural source exclusion, meaning we are held to the standard that all non-natural sources of pollution that might be coming from runoff or other sources get cleaned up. I mean, that's what it calls for. All it says is that we do not believe we should be paying to clean up the natural bacteria that occurs within that harbor. So although, you know, I think that there's a misunderstanding as to what we're asking the regional board to do. We're not saying that we don't clean up the non-natural sources of pollution. That's what we want to be held to. And whether it comes from the runoff through the storm drains or other sources, that's what we want to clean up.
Right, and nothing would prevent us from cleaning up the natural sources of
Correct.
pollution if this board chooses to fund it, if it's possible.
Well, just to reiterate.
And I would
there's
just
no,
ask
Madam Chair, with your
Supervisor
permission,
Flynn,
there's no
I just
way
wanna
to
make sure that we
distinguish
stay in
between
order.
natural and unnatural at this
No, that's
point in
not
time.
true.
Excuse me, just for order, Supervisor Long has her mic on, and
I see.
she hasn't interrupted, but she still is supposed to go next, and then you.
Good.
Well,
Supervisor
and
Long.
I would certainly want to the youth who are in the audience and listening today to assure you that this board over the years has had numerous studies brought before this board that we have funded and that we have asked to have the information so we can work from information and facts, not from anecdotal or emotional levels of trying to harm or ignore any population in this county. I think if you read thoroughly the letter that goes with this report, it does just as Ms. Madden noted, which is to raise the issue objecting to spending millions of dollars in precious discretionary public resources to treat naturally occurring sources of bacteria. And as was mentioned, this does not say that the board's given up. You know, there have been a variety of things presented that we've explored and said, let's not give up, let's continue to do what we can to clean these beaches up. And in fact, over the past 5 years, we have done additional things like collecting feral cats, installing trash cans, refuge collection, using squawkers to deter seagulls, etc. We have tried numerous things and will continue to try to do numerous things. This is a report that protects both the taxpayers and protects common sense in saying to the regional board, DNA is a proven technology that gets to the source of what a contamination is. We spent lots of money to do a DNA study. So unless there's a professional out there that I'm aware of who says DNA is bogus art or science, then I have to believe that the work we've done substantiates the request in this document today that says to the regional board, here's our position on the use of funds and the related to the permit that you're proposing to put on Ventura County regarding the beaches. And I'm done with that now. I'm ready to go with the motion.
We don't have a motion yet. I know Supervisor Flynn has his light on again, and I would also like to make a comment. So go ahead,
Okay.
Supervisor Flynn.
Yeah. The studies that were done were inconclusive studies. And they were used because they're inconclusive. They were used to say, we're just not going to touch Kitty Beach. When I was in Washington a couple of years ago, I went to the Army Corps of Engineers and talked with the person who is responsible for this area, this region. And I said, if we could find a way to take the sand out of, there's a barrier at Kitty Beach. There's a barrier out in the water, and the sand has come up to the top of that barrier. I said, if there's a way we could dredge that sand out, then we would cause some natural action to go on. And she agreed with me. The engineer, she's an engineer. I've forgotten her name now, but she was very sensitive, especially about the children not being able to use the beach that was built for children, that was made for children by the Army Corps of Engineers. It's called Kitty Beach. We're taking something away. We're reducing the importance of a facility for kiddies. That's what it's called, kiddies.
Okay. I think it's interesting to read that discussions about how to take care of the bacteria include things like steam cleaning the sand or replacing it with gravel. And I think this gets back to comments that I made at the regional board last week, which is we need to address the source of the pollution, not try to, instead of spending all our money cleaning up that sand, it will just get dirty again if we don't address the source. And I don't question the reports that we have paid for that with an intensive DNA study that finds 71% of the bacteria is coming from birds there. And I would just hope that that's something, we continue to work at, and we have been. There's been some good suggestions that we haven't tried yet, but that seems to be the problem. I don't think just because it's avian, though, and I might be wrong, that the type of bacteria that is there from the birds is less harmful. To me, there's still an issue that, you have issues of safety as a result of the amount of bacteria there, and I don't know if you can address that.
I don't feel qualified to address that issue. I do know that representatives from our environmental health department have been participating in discussions with a group of other scientists throughout Southern California, and they are actually looking at the standards that are used under AB 411 and whether they are appropriate and whether there is in fact a causal effect between bacteria and illness. And they're probably about 3 or 4 years away from conclusions on that issue. That we may see a change and modification in how we measure the public health risk from bacteria, but for the time being we have to stick to the AB 411 standards. We have no record of anyone ever getting sick at Kitty and Hobie Beach. Our public health officer several years ago did a very aggressive public information campaign, even went on Spanish radio trying to encourage people who become sick after going at Kitty and Hobie Beach to report those illnesses, and we never did get any reports of that. So, not to say that we're not interested in continuing to clean up, and Supervisor Flynn is correct. We have made significant strides, I think, in cleaning up the water quality at Kitty and Hobie Beach, but we do not believe that we are going to be able to meet the standards that are being outlined in this TMDL because so much of that bacteria is naturally occurring. And with endangered species immediately adjacent to Kitty and Hobie Beach, like the snowy plover, and I understand there's millions and millions of dollars that are going to be put in to preserving that species, we can't go after the seagulls and the other seabirds without affecting.
Well, and there was that one proposal to put this huge fountain in the middle of the water there, which may not affect the snowy plover unless they hang out there. I think it's more of a seagull deterrent. My last comment on this is, from my research back when we were looking at problems with Kitty Beach, just noting all up and down the coast, all these beaches, Mom's Beach and Mother's Beach and Kids Beach, and there are all these ones that don't have much flow of water, and so as a result of lack of circulation, you end up in situations like this. I don't think, I feel a little bit uncomfortable saying that we, as a county, ensure that Kitty Beach is safe, because I don't think that that is always the case, and though that is something that we strive for. So that's the only thing that concerns me in the letter to the board is, as I read it, says that we ensure that Kitty and Hobie beaches are safe for families that visit them. I would prefer, and that's on the first page, that we say we can continue to work to ensure, or we are constant, we are working to see that that will be the case. But I'm not so sure that I want to stand by, and if I'm reading that right, and say I can ensure everybody that Kitty Beach is safe for families to visit them, because that's not always the case. Maybe you can.
You're referring to the first paragraph of the letter to Ms. Smith?
Second paragraph, right?
Second paragraph. Committed to providing recreational opportunities to residents of and visitors to.
We have expended considerable effort and money, including a state water board grant, over the last 7 years to identify possible sources of bacteria loads and ensure that Kitty and Hobie beaches are safe for the families that visit them.
About as safe as we can possibly make them
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Right.
To enhance the safety in Kitty.
Right,
and
to
Hobie
enhance the
Beach.
There you
safety
go.
sounds
Yeah,
good.
there you go.
I don't want to
Good.
stand around saying I'm ensuring it. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then Supervisor Foy and then Supervisor Bennett.
There was a comment made that says the studies were inconclusive. Is that true, or were they very conclusive?
Well, actually, the DNA study, I think, was pretty conclusive. Now, within a certain degree of accuracy, I'm sure as any science, you can't be exactly sure that that's the specific number, but DNA has been used quite often to identify sources, and I think that that's a proven science. There were a series of circulation studies that were done at Kitty and Hobie Beach that also suggested that the contamination at Kitty and Hobie Beach is right near the shore. It's not coming from within the harbor or other outside locations. It's a very localized source.
Right. Okay. That's what. The other thing is, I just want to say that I appreciate you doing whatever you can to save the tax dollars a lot of money, because we can just spend a whole lot of money and get very little return for that money. And I just want to say I appreciate you willing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, Supervisor Bennett.
Thank you very much. I think it's just important for us to just call this for what it is. This, we've been very generous by staff to say, we think there's a misunderstanding on the part of Supervisor Flynn, both from the CEO, and this is not a misunderstanding at all. This is just an opportunity to be able to make a great emotional soundbite, to misrepresent the situation and make a great emotional soundbite. We ought to just be really clear about this. Because in part of what he was saying, he said that he wants us to be able to clean up the Victoria Avenue runoff in an effective and low-cost manner. That's exactly what we're asking for in this letter. What we're trying to say in this letter is give us rules that allow us to spend our money on the things we can actually do something about, rather than rules that force us to spend our money on things that are naturally occurring that we may not be able to do anything about. That's all this letter is doing. But that wouldn't be a very good emotional soundbite. This is the time to consult. No board member got this in advance. No board member got to sort of work this letter, at an advantage over anybody else. This is exactly when we are supposed to consult. And what basically that reference said was, we don't want, as staff, while the board is dark, we don't want to submit a letter to you and not have had the board have a chance to read the letter. This was our chance. We got it Thursday to be able to read this letter and move forward. And if someone failed to prepare for this meeting properly by not asking for whatever information they needed to be able to evaluate this letter, and then turns around and says they want more time, what they're really saying is they want to get past the September 26th deadline, because we won't have another meeting and we'll have no comment in here at all. So turning it into a failure to prepare into an attempt to attack staff for saying we want to continue to pollute The beach is just a classic misrepresentation, but we all know I mean, we've been here before, but we ought to just get that said so we don't go for a long period of time trying to
Supervisor Bennett, would you please
work
make a
around it.
motion so we can move
So,
on?
yeah, I'd like to
Thank
make
you.
the motion
I'd
that
like
we
to
approve.
respond.
I'd like to make the motion that we approve staff's recommendation with the one change in the letter that we just said, which is
About enhancing safety. Thank you.
that to enhance the safety at Hobie and Kitty Beach, and that staff is directed to deliver this message and this message exclusively to the board when they go to the board. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We
I
have a
wanna speak to
motion
the
and a
motion.
second, and I think we have an objection to the motion. Supervisor
Yeah.
Flynn.
Thank you very much. You did approve it, Madam Chair, and of course, Mr. Bennett accepts that change in wording, which means that he even learned something here at the board. But anyone who has experience at spinning, he's the master. I think I've learned a lot from Mr. Bennett. He can spin an issue and spin an issue. Just
Okay,
think of how
you
he's-
know,
just think
Supervisor
of how he
Flynn,
spun
this isn't
that,
really
hang on a
pertinent
second,
to the
let's have
item
equal
before
time
us.
here for a tax.
Wait, how about save it for your board comment, because this is regarding a specific item. And let's move on.
I'm not ready yet.
Oh.
So he's the master spinner. That's why he knows so much about it. He gave me a lot of credit here. I'm happy I was able to spin this thing.
Okay.
I'm happy I was able to bring this to the attention of the public. It's taken over a half an hour of time, and I'm proud of that.
All right, we have a motion, a second, and one objection. The motion passes. This is on item 11 specifically. Now we have the rest of our consent agenda items, which probably aren't as controversial. Items through item 17. Are there any questions or a motion? Items 10, please. Thank you. We have a motion and a second from Supervisor Foy to move the consent agenda. Seeing no objections, it passes. Our next item on the agenda then is our public comment period, and we have several public comment cards. Sorry for the delay. Our first speaker is Hector Aguilar, followed by Catalina Chavez.
Good morning. My name is Hector Aguilar, and I've been working for Prudential Overall Supply by 10 years. We are on a strike now. We are on a strike now because we supported our brother and sister from Milpitas and Vista. The company make unfair law practice, and because those companies wanted union, they wanted the respect and the dignity to come and make a contract. We know Ventura County have a contract with Prudential, and we have a plan on Venice, and they're probably going to be out too, in sympathy of those plants. We want your support, because we need you send a letter to Don Clark. Probably, if we are out, we think like the product cannot be the same quality, because they hire a new people if they don't have experience. So it's important for us, you supported us to solve this problem. We need work. We deserve a better future for our family. It's not easy to be out and picking online. But we here, we got the power to support other people and see how's the condition as they working, because we have unfair law practice and charge to them more than 20 charges, like intimidation, like instigating them, and no respect. So it's very important to us you give and support us. So thank you very much, and we're glad you supported us. Thank you. Have a nice
Thank
day.
you. And that's the Prudential Laundry strike?
Yes.
Thank you, Hector. And now Catalina Chavez.
Mi nombre es Catalina Chávez. Estoy trabajando en la Prudential por 20 años.
My name is Carolina Chavez. I've been working at Prudential for over 20 years. My name is Fabian. I'll be doing a little translation. Hector did a great job for himself.
La razón por la cual estamos aquí es porque necesitamos el apoyo de ustedes para que ustedes hablen o manden una carta al patrón Dan Clark.
So the reason we're here is we want you guys to support our fight. We want you to send a letter to Dan Clark, the owner.
No queríamos salirnos en huelga, pero estamos aquí para apoyar a los de Milpitas y Vista, que son los que tienen más, que no los ayudan en nada.
We didn't want to go on strikes, but we went on strike in support to the workers in Mipitas and Vista because they're the ones that are having a even harder time in those locations.
He conversado a veces con una de mis compañeras y ellas tienen mucha intimidación, o sea que los hacen sentir mal para que no dejen el trabajo.
I've talked to a lot of my coworkers and they've felt very intimidated because of what the company is doing.
Y la razón por la cual estamos trabajando es porque hay muchas personas que necesitan el trabajo, tienen niños, tienen enfermedades y necesitan el trabajo para salir adelante y él no lo toma en cuenta.
And we're here in protest and in support to our coworkers because a lot of my coworkers need the jobs. People are sick and they want to keep on fighting.
So necesitamos el apoyo de ustedes para que ustedes le digan a él que ya pare, que se arregle todo esto, porque estamos caminando desde las 3 de la mañana enfrente de la planta hasta estamos tomando turno.
So we're asking your help. We've been out on strike for a couple of weeks, and we're always up at 3 in the morning in front of the plant, and we have a 24-hour picket line.
Lo que a mí a veces me ha hecho sentir mal en mi trabajo es que él llega por allí a veces con alguien más, representantes o algo así. Él pasa por el lado de nosotros y no es para decir buenos días o buenas tardes. Él solo pasa y no nos toma en cuenta.
So what's really irritated me about the owner Dan Clark is that he's usually when he was walking the plant while I was working, he never took us into consideration, didn't even say hi to us.
Eso me hace sentir mal a mí, porque si son 20 años los que yo estoy trabajando allí, más compañeros tienen más años y él no lo toma en cuenta como si no fuéramos nada.
And this is he doesn't take that into consideration. I've been working it for over 20 years, and that's one thing that makes me upset.
So yo agradezco a ustedes que nos hayan aceptado estar aquí para apoyar a nuestros compañeros y hermanos, y muchas gracias.
So I thank the board here to give me the opportunity to express how I feel here. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. Melanie
Madam Chair,
Saldivar.
if you would meet with Elizabeth, will you stand up, Elizabeth? After you finish, outside. She works in my office.
Thank you.
Melanie
Ella
Saldivar.
está trabajando en mi oficina. Elizabeth.
Melanie Saldivar, followed by Elizabeth Regalado.
Mi nombre es Melanie Molina Saldívar y trabajo para Prudential ya casi por 9 años.
My name is Melanie, and I've been working for Prudential for over 9 years.
Sí, y lo mismo, estamos aquí también para pedirles ayuda a ustedes también,
We're here asking you in support for our cause,
para que den a saber a Dan Clark también de que es cómo nos la estamos pasando acá afuera.
so you can give a message to Dan Clark how we're out here in protest.
Porque tanto los que están adentro y los que están afuera están sufriendo también por sus familias.
For the workers that are working inside and for the strikers that are outside, it's been very hard.
Y ustedes no se imaginan el trabajo tan fuerte y tan duro que es.
You can't imagine the kind of work, the hard work that we go through.
Y, les damos gracias por su apoyo.
And I thank you for your support.
Y esperamos ganar esto.
And we're hoping we're going to win this.
Gracias.
Thank you.
And our best of luck to you on that. Elizabeth Regalado. followed by Jeanette Sanchez.
Good morning. Did you receive my handout?
Not yet. And if you take both those microphones and put them together, that will help the sound. Thank you.
Okay.
You can go ahead as she passes them out.
Okay. The handout you're receiving is a photocopy of my hands. I was a county employee. I had this accident when I was 15 months old. If I'm 56, I've been like this for 55 years. And it's taken 40 surgeries to make my hands what they are today. I applied for non-work related disability in December of 2006. Social Security. I applied for Social Security disability in September. I received a letter, and you have it there, a copy, dated December 1st, 2006, saying that I was granted Social Security disability, and the county has proceeded to tell me that they have a different criteria than the federal government. Right here it says I'm going to receive $658 a month. I'm a single mother. My daughter just left last Friday for UC Santa Cruz. I'm so proud of her. But how am I going to be able to give her anything on $658? I need help, and I can't afford an attorney in expediting my disability. I mean, you can't press my belly button and my fingers are going to go back. I've been like this for 55 years. What does the county want from me? I have osteoarthritis now. I worked hard. You can ask Supervisor Flynn. He used to visit my parents for 40 years, and he never even knew I was handicapped because my parents brought me up to be the person that I am. And I've worked. I could have sat at home and done nothing, but I worked as much as I could. I went to my doctor and I said, I'm tired of pretending like I'm not in pain. I am in pain. I might not look it, but I am. And I really, really would like your assistance in helping me get my disability because I cannot live on $658 a month. My state disability runs out my next check. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, and definitely we'll look into that. Jeanette Sanchez, followed by Das Williams.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnston. My name is Jeanette Sanchez, and I'm here representing SCIU in Ventura. SCIU represents thousands of workers in various departments of the counties, cities, and special districts in Ventura. Hundreds of our members wear Prudential overall supply uniforms to work every day. We are here today in solidarity with Prudential workers who have been forced to strike due to the company's violation of labor law. We are also here because the strike could directly impact uniformed county and city employees. We have seen this happen in other cities and counties, and it can be a huge problem if your county workers do not have the uniforms they need, particularly in departments like wastewater, streets, fleet services, and mechanic shops. These uniforms are not something that employees should be forced to bring home and expose their family to. When services were interrupted on a similar laundry contract in City of Hayward in 2003, where our sister local, SCIU 1021, represents employees, we had employees who were forced to wear overalls for weeks in the summer heat and bring uniforms home to wash. One department even toyed with the idea of buying a washing machine. Clearly, this is not how we would like our resources to be spent. We urge the board to take this issue seriously right now and closely examine our rights under Prudential's contract. Staff should be tracking Prudential's performance closely and be ready to move to a reliable supplier quickly for service breach of contract. I will be communicating with our members who wear these uniforms to make sure that they are not victims of the service problems. And just to give you an idea of where this could impact the county, let me just give you a quick list of the areas who use Prudential services. HCA, GSA facilities, sheriff's courts, crime lab, jails, custody, Fire Headquarters, Training and Other Facilities in Camarillo, Parks and Recs, Ventura County Medical Center, Libraries, Harbor, Waterworks, Airports, Animal Regulation, Public Health, Facility and Grounds, and this is just to name a few. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Das Williams, the Honorable Das Williams, followed by Carol Dean Williams.
Good morning. Thank you for that, Ms. Chair. I think this is a little bit arcane. This contract, one would think, would have been covered by the living wage, and these workers would be receiving a living wage, as was the intention of this board when they passed the living wage ordinance in 2001. There is a reason. Prudential, in all of these contracts, not just with the County of Ventura, but in other areas, interprets this not as a service, but as a good. And I think that it is clear, judging from the fact that the living wage ordinance included language that specifically called out cleaning services, that it was the intention of this board to cover workers such as these. Because of that, it would be, there's several possible remedies and ways that the board or the CEO could deal with this. One is if there is an interruption of services because of a strike, you would have the grounds to cancel the contract or not renew the contract. Right now, the contract is up for renewal. The second thing that you could do is use the interim time to specifically amend the living wage ordinance to cover these employees in any way that your county council advises. That way, when the contract is up for renewal, they will be required to adhere to it. Or alternatively, the board could specifically pass a resolution and try to put some pressure on Prudential as an entity. This is something that is not just important for the workers at the Van Nuys facility, but is also important. Prudential does have a facility in Ventura County, and so it is some of your constituents also whose wages are at stake here in this large conflict. And Prudential is just a good example of someone who is flaunting the living wage laws, not just in Ventura County, but in Northern California and Southern California as well. We urge you to take action, and I can also tell you that other living wage contracts have covered this, and Mission Linen is required in several places to adhere to the living wage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Now we have Carol Dean Williams. And that's our last speaker for the day in terms of public comments.
No relation to the previous speaker.
Absolutely not.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You are a superb chairperson today. Everybody take a deep breath through your nose and smell the fresh air in this room. You need to spend some time at City Hall with the Ventura City Council and the Ventura Unified School Board smelling that stale air to appreciate this fresh air with lemon water. Here's hot off the Cougar Press of Ventura High, an opinion section, and it made me make a few phone calls to Ventura High and the administration, and no one could give me any answers. Now listen to this. The future of the world. Honestly? On August 23rd, 2007, the juniors filed in for orientation. Miss Val Wyatt, principal, began to explain this year's agenda. Don't leave, Supervisor Parks. Right after she acknowledged the rule, quote, in quotations, no gum allowed on campus, and Supervisor Parks was enjoying her gum before the meeting started, somebody popped their gum loudly. Soon after, several other students joined in on the ruckus until the smacking sounds filled the auditorium. Mr. Cornwell, in an effort to cease the popping, encouraged the group to come forward with the names of disruptive students. This only provoked the crowd. They began to call out, quote, rat, unquote. Unfortunately, the senior orientation went about as well as the junior orientation. They tossed around purple balloons and booed the faculty members. Ventura High School principals deny it happened. They said this is a false opinion piece. Well, you know, we live in a country where a tax on tea created us. But at least tea was invented. The city of Ventura wants to tax us on Measure C7 on things that hasn't been invented. I tried to talk to the county council about this. Listen to the email from the chief financial officer of the city of Ventura. This ordinance, Measure C7, is designed to handle these changes in technology, most of which haven't even been invented yet. You know, I found something worse than the campaign finance ordinance. This is it. This is worse than the campaign finance ordinance. But it gets better. Here's a letter from the chief financial officer of the city of Ventura, quote, "City Council has instructed me to provide this information to Ventura residents." That's a violation of the city charter. Section 709, interference in administration. The council and its members shall deal with the city officers and employees who are subject to the direction and supervision of the manager solely. That word solely is so strong, so important. Through the manager, and neither the council nor any council member shall give orders, instructions to any such officer or employee, either publicly or privately. The chief financial officer said he was directed by the city council to do this. That is a misdemeanor under Penal Code Section 19. Now, here's the city attorney's contract. He was making $137,000 in Boulder, Colorado. He comes to Ventura making $232,000, more than your CEO. He needs a raise now. And now they've deposited $12,000 into his retirement account. And I'm alleging these are bribes to keep from being prosecuted because they committed this crime in the process of hiring him. Now, the district attorney is supposed to prosecute the California Penal Code, but I've asked the city attorney to turn it over to the district attorney. So, Mr. Johnson, you are very underpaid at this point.
Mr. Williams, you are very over your time limit.
Oh. Just let me summarize, but
No,
you are very appreciated,
Okay,
Mr. Johnson.
thank you, Mr. Williams. Good to keep our...
Carol Dean, he probably wanted you to do that 3 or 4 years ago.
Well, now, let's see. We have a 9:30 time certain, so let's do that right now. This is a second hearing regarding adoption of an ordinance repealing and reenacting the mobile home park rent control ordinance. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Yes.
Kim Hocking, you just said it. This is a hearing to reenact and reappeal the ordinance, 3 items, 2 of which were directed by your board and 1 of which came through the process with the Rent Review Board. And that's the staff recommendation is to go forward with that adoption today.
Thank you. I do have 2 public comment cards on this. So we have Gino Marino and Daniel Tillaston.
I'm Gino Marino, President of Ezra from El Sereno Resident Estates Association. The comment that Supervisor Bennett made last week was perfect. We are mobile homeowners. We're stuck in our old homes. We do the best we can to fix them up, and we can't move. It would cost thousands of dollars to move, and they won't. You can't move an old coach into another park. They just won't allow that. You either had to buy a new home, so whatever Supervisor Bennett said last week was perfect. So I hope you members will go along with that and do that voting for us today. Thank you.
Did my mom write your comments?
What?
I said, did my mom write your comments?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Marino. And our
The
next
question
speaker
is, Mr.
is
Bennett, why you're
Daniel Talatson. And I just having a maiden name that was never pronounced correctly for my whole maiden time.
And you did marvelously with doing that.
Well, I can definitely relate.
Most people never get it right, but thank you, Chairman Parks. Good morning to all of you. I have three comments, or three issues that I want to comment about. Mobile home park living is not like normal kind of living. My wife and I, 4 years ago, moved from a 2,000 square foot, 5-bedroom home, 2-story, into a 2-bedroom mobile home. And I guarantee you, it's a drastic change. No matter what you do to improve the mobile home, it is minimalized living. And people in general who live in that minimalized living live on fixed minimalized incomes. If they have a retirement income, it is generally fixed. If they have Social Security, it is minimal. We do not have the blessings that we enjoyed in our earlier years. Space is minimalized. Comforts are minimalized. We talk in terms of increasing rent at $25 a month and think that's not a lot. But over 5 years, it's $125. And that minimalized income does not go up $125 over that 25 years. The struggle that we continually face is that the mobile home owners, mobile home park owners, want more. They want more from us. And our incomes don't go up that rate. They don't go up at market rate. They go up at minimalized rates. Lawyers for the mobile home parks search through all of the fine wording of the ordinances and the legislation, searching for ways to change how money comes into their coffers. And they have the staff to do that. Mobile home park owners have the power. Mobile home renters don't. All we have is trust. That's all we have. Trust in the integrity, trust in the fairness, trust in the equitability that we see this Board of Supervisors affording. I know there are some of you who don't have a lot of mobile home parks in your districts, but all of you are representatives of all the members of this district, of this county. And we look to you and trusted you for that. Third point, the park owners have spoken several times to having balance, this idea of balance between what they get and what the mobile home the mobile home owners get. There's nothing balanced about proposing 5 subtle ways of undermining rent control and seeking balance by saying, give us 2 and you get 2, or give us 2 and you get 3. That's not what balance is about. Balance is about being equitable and just. And it is your judgment that we look to for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Not having any other public comment cards on this item, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I'd like to move the recommended action.
Second.
I have a motion and a couple of seconds. Seeing no objections, seeing one objections, excuse me. That's the same vote as we had last time. The motion is approved on a 4-1 with Supervisor Foy dissenting. And that concludes the 9:30, and we can go back to the regular agenda. Thank you. And we'll go on now to our board comments. And board comments, shall we start over on Supervisor Supervisor Bennett's volunteering. Thank you.
Great. Well, one, as the mobile home people are leaving, it's been a long journey, about a year since we kind of started down this road, and I just want to thank them for their support, and I'm glad we got where we are at this point in time. I also, while you're here, want to emphasize the governor has in front of him AB 1542. Volume counts. And what do I mean by that? The more letters the governor receives, the more likely the governor is going to be to sign that. We have now a fax number so that you can get your letter there faster. If you could go back to your parks and have people get letters to the governor, and if you want to fax them or get them to us, we can also get them to our lobbyist in Sacramento. It would be a big help right now. But we're right at a critical, this is really the critical moment for us to get it through the legislature like this. So anything you can do to help with that, we'd sure appreciate it. AARP has written an official letter to the governor. We got a copy of it yesterday. So we got the pedal to the metal. Let's hope that we get there. So thanks for your support with that. So that's one. Thank you very much. The second thing that you guys can go on. My other comments are not about that. Thanks. The second thing I'd like to point out is that we got great news in that the Word of Bill has finally passed the Senate. So the bill is literally on the President's desk finally. And in Ventura County, there's significant impacts for us with the Word of Bill. Particularly, one certainly is the Ventura River Ecosystem Restoration Project, the Mantillaha Dam removal. And the good news is, in spite of the fact that the President has threatened to veto the bill passed both the House and the Senate with veto-proof majorities. So we're likely to have the Word of Bill pass even if the President vetoes it, which is really good news for us. So that's the second thing, and I mentioned that. The third thing I mentioned last week, but we have one weekend left, or this coming weekend on Saturday, September 29th, is the United Way Day of Caring, and people can volunteer for projects all over Ventura County, and I'd just like to read the various project sites in case any staff are listening or any of us can identify, but every one of these project sites could use more people for the United Way Day of Caring, and that's the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, the Boys and Girls Club of Camarillo, the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Oxnard and Port Hueneme, Boys and Girls Club of Simi Valley, El Centrito de la Colonia, Easter Seals, here in East Ventura, City of Ventura, Food Share of Ventura County, Help of Ojai, Interface Children and Family Services, Many Mansions in Thousand Oaks, Many Motors, Prototypes Women's Center, the RAIN Project Transitional Living Center, the county's program, the Ride on Therapeutic Horsemanship, Schools on Wheels, Silverado Hospice, the Wellness Community, United Blood Services, and the Ventura County Rescue Mission. That's where the United Way is trying to send volunteers. And if you did not participate last year, I'll tell you, it's one of the most satisfying things you can be involved in, simply because of how linked you feel to everybody else when you show up and there are dozens of other people from your community that are there trying to either paint that building or clean that trash or do something for this particular nonprofit, whichever one you decide to join, to help them stay viable and alive and productive. But it has that old-fashioned flavor of the barn raising, where everybody in the community comes together and you feel that real sense of connection. We need more of that in our highly technical sort of compartmentalized society that we live in. So those three comments are the comments I'd like to make today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Bennett. Supervisor Flynn, would you like to go next?
Yes, I'd ask the board to adjourn memory of the people on this list, and that's the extent of my comment.
And I'd like to ask the board to adjourn in memory of the people on my list, too. Thank you.
Thank you. And then also Supervisor Long?
Yes, thank you. I have a list to adjourn in memory of also to submit to the board, and under our 11 o'clock time certain item, I'll comment on the Executive Steering Committee Jail Corrections Reform meeting I attended yesterday. I'd also like to ask a question. On next week's agenda, there's a 10:30 time certain, and it says subject unknown at this time. Supervisor Flynn has it listed. I've never seen that before on our advanced calendar. Usually there is a slug line, and that slug line is for the public's benefit to really understand what's coming before this board. I'm not expecting to have advanced materials because it's not the time cycle to do so. But I ask at this point, do we have information on what that item is?
Well, I'll make that available tomorrow to the public and to you. We'll have it a proper language for it. So
Okay.
you'll have it before, when you normally receive the agenda.
I appreciate that. My request would be, and whether we need to do this at some future date on administrative management of agendas, is that we should not have a slug line that says subject unknown at this time, particularly 1 week out from the item. If it's a matter of a supervisor working on something to determine what's the best legal title for that slug line, I've struggled with that and had to do that at times too. But when you're 1 week out from an item, in order for board offices and anyone to do preparation, there should at least be a slug line listed. So I'd ask that the CEO will work with the clerk of the board to see how that might be accomplished. That's the last of my comments at this time.
Thank you, Supervisor Long. Supervisor Foy?
Thank you. I'd like to adjourn in memory of Travis Hansen. Travis was a young 12-year-old who was struck by a truck in Simi Valley, a tragic accident. And it's just tough when young life, the guy just crossing the street, you know. It's a tough thing. So those are my comments for today. Thank you.
Just seem to be having a lot of car, bicycle, and pedestrian accidents lately, particularly in Thousand Oaks. I think I heard of another one with a bicyclist yesterday, unfortunately. Let me just ask that the board close in honor of Margaret Gabriel, and I'll submit her name for that. And then also wanted to point out to the board that for the first time in 4 years, we have no hazardous material report on our agenda, so that's something to celebrate. So with that, then we'll go on to the rest of our agenda. We could probably take care of our 10 a.m. time certain. This is a recommendation from Supervisor Flynn.
Yes, thank you. Let me pass this out to you.
But before I can ask a question first. Peter, what you going to ask?
And can I ask a question real quick before?
Certainly.
I just had a couple questions from County Council on this item. And it just says in the third paragraph right here, it says I wasn't involved with this back in December of last year. It says that the December 19th, 2006 action was fatally flawed and was illegal, and I'm curious about that illegal. How do we deal with that? Is that true? What is that?
No, the action of December 19th by the Watershed Protection District Board was not illegal. And there are, I think, 2 points to be made. First, the contract is between 2 separate legal entities governed by the same board. And by saying that one board's action is illegal, whereas the other board's action was not, is to suggest, in essence, that your board acting on behalf of one entity has a cause of action against the other entity which it also governs. I don't think that's legally cognizable. Second, the contract in question refers to up to $4 million, and Supervisor Flynn seems to take that language as a minimum commitment by the Watershed Protection District. I think that the records of the board make it clear that the members of the board stated time and again that each potential action by the Watershed Protection District Board to use up to $4 million would be carefully examined and determined on a case-by-case basis. Lastly, because there are two entities involved, obviously the county board acting on behalf of the county has to ask the district to grant such funds as it may choose, and I don't think there's any possibility that the county will ever make such a request to the district unless your board acts on that.
Okay, all right, so understanding that we sit on both those boards, and I understand that, so okay, so that makes sense to me. I was just confused when we used the word illegal. So, all right.
And now,
With your
Supervisor
permission.
Flynn. Yes.
Thank you. This issue becomes very complex as we look at it today. My overall concern, as you know, is that people in El Rio are going to have a very, very difficult time unless we provide grant money from the state and the matching money that goes along with the grants. So that's my concern way up here. The letter, let me just make a couple of comments. You know, when you can correct me if I'm wrong, when we meet as the Watershed Protection District Board of Directors, it should so state. And it does not so state. It should so state that. When an action is taken by us, Sir, Mr. My friend from the 4th District, Mr. Foy, if I could have your attention. We serve as board of directors for the Watershed Protection District. If we take an action as the board of directors, it ought to so state, not as the board of supervisors. That's one kind of general statement. Another general statement I would make is we tend to confuse the county government, the district government, and the Zone 2. They're three separate entities, even though Zone 2 comes under the Watershed Protection District Board of Directors. It's still a Zone 2. What my letter does here is say to you that the agreement reached in 2003 was an agreement. It was an agreement. Let's just take a look at it. And my main thrust here is if you're going to do away with an agreement, you need to reconsider the action that was taken on December 9th, 2003. No reconsideration of that action took place. Simply wiped out, not legally correctly, wiped out this agreement by not even considering it, but by simply wiping it out with an action that was taken in December of 2006. Well, you can't do that. This agreement had to be reconsidered. An agreement is a strong statement by this board. Let's just turn to the agreement. If you would turn to, board members, if you would turn, including Mr. Bennett, if you would turn to the recitals on the agreement and look through those recitals, very important statements are made there. District pursuant to paragraph 6 of section 46.7 of the Water Code Appendix has the power to prevent contamination, pollution, or otherwise rendering unfit for beneficial use the surface or subsurface waters used in the district. There was a question by the city of Ventura, I think, and the city of Fillmore. I think Oxnard has finally resolved it in its own way. that the Watershed Protection District could not use the money for sewers in El Rio. This takes away that. This speaks to that issue. The county will require substantial grant monies to complete the El Rio 4-Bay groundwater containment and elimination project. And then you turn to the next page. The language kind of changes here a bit. But HI, the district wishes to use Zone 2 district funds not to exceed $4 million, no more than $4 million, but $4 million, for a project which will protect the subsurface drinking waters beneath the entire Oxnard Plain from contamination. We're talking about a lot of people here, 180,000 people who somehow drink some of that water. Some of it's blended, but it touches 180,000 people. Then look at the now therefore, the parties agree as follows. Look at number 4. County shall, that's a strong word, with the above financial assistance from the district, initiate proceedings to form a county service area, and on completion of the project, that's what all those letters sound like, the El Rio Sewer Project, shall operate and maintain the public sewer system with the above financial assistance. So what we've done is taken an agreement and simply ignored it. An agreement is a very strong statement by this board that it agreed to spend up to $4 million from the money derived from the sale of property on this project. So along comes the next one.
Supervisor Flynn, can I ask you a real quick question, Madam Chair? You just said that. I looked through, there's 3 other places in here, and it goes back to what County Council said. It says, if approved, will provide up to $4 million. And then it says back here on, it says therefore up to $4 million, and you just said it again. So
not to exceed $4
million.
Not
Not to exceed, but up to. But we gave, I guess you guys had, I'm looking at a report that I had, a piece of paper that said you had, I think 1.6 million went there. So I'm still trying to figure out what that difference, that agreement is. If it said up to, you couldn't give more than 4, but you could give anything less than. Correct, right?
Well, you're reading it in a certain way, but as I read and it is confusing language, I will confess to that, but as I read it.
Well, because I'm saying up to means only that's the max you can give, but you can give anything below that.
Okay, hang on just a second. Let me make sure I find the right agreement. Hang on.
There isn't shall, it's may use up to.
Not to exceed. Okay, not to exceed. So I think that's important. If you go to the December 19th action, and remember that action was a continued action from December 12th, and go through, look at the recommendations dated December 12, 2006, which was continued to December 19th, the same letter and everything. It uses the word unrestricted funds. Well, unrestricted funds. The funds belonged in Zone 2. The funds were in the budget of Zone 2 and the account of Zone 2. So unrestricted, that is a word that's used, I think, incorrectly here, and it's used several places by Mr. Pratt, who's here today. Good morning. And then the district summarizes a study that was done.
Can I ask you one other question on this? Okay. Trying to understand more of this.
Right.
When you say unrestricted is, or maybe County Council has to answer this, or maybe Mr. Pratt has to answer this, that have to stay in there unrestricted, maybe I'm confused. Were they, County Council, were they able to go anywhere, these funds?
Within the district, unrestricted funds mean that the monies can be spent anywhere in the district. Restricted funds means that they have to be spent within the zone.
Okay. And so what we're saying is we spent money within the district. We divvied this money up within the district of 1.6 million, some plus, stayed within that one zone.
Well, there was, I believe, what Mr. Pratt referred to as fairy dust during the hearing.
I got to learn those technical terms.
It was a substantial amount of unrestricted funds, and those funds have been used for many different purposes. And Mr. Pratt would have to explain what those are.
But that's a common practice then.
Yes, I mean, if funds are unrestricted, they can be spent for any district purpose anywhere in the district.
Good. Okay.
Well, that's a good. If I can comment, you did ask me about it also. That's a good definition. On the other hand, how did these restricted funds that were in Zone 2 become unrestricted? That's the question I have. A rhetorical question I'd like you to think about. How did they become? What authority was it that gave whoever made the decision, in this case the board, to call them unrestricted to be used anywhere in the district when most of the law, if not all, talks about money within zones must stay there? Whether it's property tax money, assessment money, it does not treat money that came from the sale of property. And I'm going to talk about this later.
Can I ask the county council to make comment on that so I can understand?
Yes, I'd be happy to answer that question. We were asked by Mr. Pratt in the Watershed Protection District whether these funds from the sale of real property, otherwise unrestricted funds, could be spent other than in Zone 2. The property that was sold was in Zone 2, and the Watershed Protection District staff wanted to know whether those were restricted or unrestricted. We issued an opinion that said they were unrestricted.
So they were never restricted funds?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask a question? This land could have been in District 2 or District 1. It just happened to be in the El Rio area? Yes. And then the question I have is, was the land that was sold owned by WPD, not by the County of Ventura?
Yes, it was owned by the Watershed Protection District. It was acquired using the district's power of eminent domain from, I've forgotten the name of the owner of the property.
Okay.
But there was a Watershed Protection District facility constructed, and the land was acquired in connection with the construction of that facility.
We don't know how far back it goes as to how it got into the ownership of Watershed Protection District?
Actually, that was fairly recent. There was an eminent domain action filed by the Watershed Protection District. There was rather lengthy litigation, a trial, and an appeal, and the district ended up paying substantially more money for the property than was thought. And the money was paid. There was excess property that was acquired at the time, and that property was subsequently sold.
Okay.
Okay, may I continue?
Yes.
Yeah, in all due respect to County Council, whom I do respect, there's a confusion here with zone and district. He uses the word district when he says it's unrestricted funds that the district has. If you look at the budget and the account numbers for this money that was derived from the sale of property, where was it? It was in Zone 2 account. Zone 2 account, that's where the money was. Zone 2 paid for the litigation, not the district. Zone 2 paid for the litigation and paid for the settlement, not the district. So we're continue to confuse district and zone and county. And if you look at the opinion, which I'm going to talk about next week, if you look at the opinion of County Council, it confuses the three terms: district, county, zone. The zone money must stay within the zone. There's no authority at all. This board had no authority to move that out of that zone. Let me go on with my points.
Okay, so why don't we have the authority? I thought as the
It's
water
not
board-
granted anywhere at all. There's no authority granted in any of the district statute that set up the district there's no authority in there to transfer money from Zone 2, in this case, to other zones. There's no authority to do that.
Is that, County Council, is that?
Well, wait a minute. Mike,
Well, I guess because I'm trying to understand all the pieces, so when you say
I'm
something.
debating in a three-party debate with County Council.
Well, I'm just trying to discuss and try to understand
I
the things you're
understand.
saying. It's new to me, so.
Okay.
The underlying question is the source of the funds. The funds in question were the proceeds of a sale of real property. And the opinion issued by my office said that proceeds from the sale of real property, no matter where that property might be in the district, constitute unrestricted funds, unlike the proceeds of real property taxes that come to the district that are based upon zones.
That's the difference, property taxes versus the sale of real property.
Correct.
Okay.
It's the source of the funds that determines whether they are restricted or not.
Okay.
Okay. I appreciate your because you have good interest here. I really appreciate that because it's difficult to understand this issue, and that's why I bring it to you. I think you need to do it the right way. If you're going to do it, you need to reconsider.
Right. Well, okay, but
the 2003 letter that we just went through.
But if you go back to what his comment was, that was real property, not property taxes, and what you were saying, it sounds like property taxes where we don't have the authority to change them.
Does not have the authority to transfer property taxes. It does not have the authority to transfer assessments. And there's nothing in the law that talks about or speaks about or writes about transferring the sale revenues from the sale of property. My argument is you've got to have authority to do this. But may I continue? If we look further at this, I'm talking about the December 19th. It's really December 12th, but it was continued, as you recall. If you look at the distribution of the money, in the wording, again, the sale of district real property, it's the sale of Zone 2 property in paragraph 2. $9 million was collected, a little over that. Of these funds, they were distributed as follows: $3.6 million to the El Rio Struby Storm Drain Project. That's because a lot of houses got flooded every year. Number two, $2 million towards the cost of the new Satakoy Operations Yard Project. Zone 2 money, again, paying for that project where it's used by the other zones also. Where are the other zone contributions to that? $1.6 million to the El Rio Sewer. $1.7 allocated as the district's 25% local match required by the Proposition 40 consolidated grant from the Matilahaw Dam. So it goes there. More money is going to the dam than is going to the El Rio project, sewer project. It uses unconditional or unrestricted a lot. And then it uses, I'm talking about Jeff Pratt's letter, uses conditional use. He says that the board conditioned the 2003 agreement. There's no conditioning of the 2003 agreement. If you read the 2003 agreement, there's nothing in there about conditions. There's nothing in there about conditions that this money would provide matching for other zone projects. So the conditional use of a portion of these unrestricted funds is not accurate. Let's continue on to the next page. It says the board's conditional approval on paragraph 1, conditional use, then conditional approval, that District Zone 2 was the beneficiary of $4 million in unexpected revenue that could be used only in Zone 2. Well, actually, the proceeds were $9-point-some million. And then some money was collected from digging out that facility because the stuff that was dug out was sold, and that was another couple of million, but that's not counted here.
So you're on page 7 of the December 12th letter of the Watershed Protection District?
May I just finish for a minute? I didn't hear your question.
You're on page 7?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's look at the paragraph that starts with subsequent to district staff's December 3rd presentation and hearing objections stated by 2 cities. The board approved the use of up to $4 million of such district funds subject to 2 conditions. Those 2 conditions aren't in the agreement. They're not anywhere in the agreement nor in the recitals. An agreement is an agreement. And if you're going to say it was conditioned, then you've got to have those conditions in the agreement. First, the district money may be used to leverage other money grant match. And second, that district staff return to the board for approval with an update each time it recommended the use of additional district funds as contributions toward the county share the cost of future components of the project, El Rio project. There's no conditions like that. Now, here's how the money was spent for the El Rio project. At the bottom of the page, money out of the source of revenue from the sale of the property is $1.6 million. And then we have a watershed-wide study. And now people learn new things. They say, we need some money over here. It's more important than clean water, drinking water. We need some money over here in this zone. So the money was all transferred out of Zone 2. Zone 2's money transferred to other zones. And Mr. Bennett was right, not just to Zone 1. However, quite a bit went to Zone 1. Quite a bit. Much more than ever went to the sewer
The
project.
lion's share went to settle a lawsuit in Lang Ranch in Thousand Oaks.
Well,
That
we're
was
talking
$3
about
million.
a different set of money here.
Okay.
Okay, go over to the next page, 9. And there's where you see that the 5.177673 was the money that Mr. Pratt referred to as fairy, what do you call it? Fairy dust. You believe in the fairy? Okay. And then this letter just transfers the money. My concern here is a parliamentary concern. If you're going to do this, and if you're going to do it right, you've got to reconsider the 2003 agreement. You've got to reconsider that action. This board, the Watershed Protection District Board of Directors, which is this board, must reconsider that 2003 agreement. And that's my presentation for the most part.
We do have some comment cards. Shall I go to them at this time then? Okay. Don Hoffman, followed by Florence Young, and then Henrietta Macias.
How many minutes do they have?
3 minutes?
I won't take 3 minutes, but
Okay.
good morning to you all. I've been following this action, reaction, and reconsideration in the papers and in my own mind. And as a resident of El Rio, a retired teacher living on a retirement income, it seems to me that the money should remain in El Rio. And the land that was sold was part of El Rio, and I think the proceeds should remain in El Rio to help defray some of the $20 million loan that we may have to make in order to put the sewers in. That's it. No 3 minutes, and appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Florence Young, followed by Henrietta Macias, and then Soledad Triono.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'll
Welcome.
try. I don't need the extra. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome back.
Thank you. And honorable board members, competent county council, and auditor control. I have had quite an education this morning, which I appreciate very much indeed, because I'm a factual person. I look into the facts. And I would very much appreciate a copy of the legal counsel's opinion regarding this matter and a copy of Supervisor Flynn, which I have not seen him. And I want you people to know I'm an independent person and I work on my own facts and I gather them. Today, what you are all forgetting, you're talking about material things. You're forgetting that you are adversely affecting people, lives. I get calls from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. For some reason, they think I can do something. There's nothing I can do but talk to you. The people are upset. They're crying. How are we going to make this? How are we going to do this? There's no money coming in. The Board of Supervisors has not acted on our behalf. They won't listen to other objections, to other policies, to other thoughts. These are lives, people. These are lives we are dealing with, not infrastructure. The people don't know how they're going to get the money. They're afraid of losing their houses. They're scared to death of eminent domain coming in. And I beg of you, I'm not asking you to cancel what you did in December. What I am imploring you to do, I won't beg, but I'm imploring you to do, is to reconsider this matter and bring it back to the board with the thought of people. People are being held in jeopardy. And I appreciate your consideration, but to me, it's all on facts, but not people. Remember, I said once before, this is a government of the people, by the people, and for God's sakes, for the people of El Rio. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Henrietta Macias and Soledad Triono, and then Victor Noze.
Good morning. I just, first of all, I'd like to thank Kathy Long for being so kind as to let us go to that meeting on behalf of you last week, and tell you all thank you. My name is Henrietta Macias. I'm a resident of El Rio for 36 years. We went to a meeting for phase 2 and 4 of the sewer system in El Rio. There are so many scared people, they don't know what to do. My mom is 82 years old and she can't figure out what she's going to get $27,000 in 3 months to pay for her septic tanks to be, broken off the property. Get the leach lines, the lines that you people, we have to put to the street to connect to the city of Oxnard. We have to pay the county of Ventura $16,000 for the work that you people did on the streets, which they say terrible. Then we have to pay the city of Oxnard $3,539 just to hook up, plus $5,000 for each septic tank that we have on our property that has to be busted out, plus the permits of $220 that we have to pay you guys again to make sure that we emptied out our septic tanks. We have to pay anywhere from $380 to $400 to have those septic tanks cleaned out so we can fill them with rock and sand. Then we have to have the county come back. But the county's not understanding that not only do we have truck drivers that we have to pay, backhoe operators, we have not just, and it's not for the fault of you people, it's because we bought there and thinking that we've always had the sewer systems, never was bothered to ever bring it up to the people to vote on it. It was mandated by the state. Now we have a lot of property that everybody wants. Bob Jones Ranch, for instance. Everybody wants our property in El Rio. But why don't you use the sales of that property to pay for the people in El Rio to get their sewer systems? Because you're the ones that are mandating it towards us. We have a River Park over there. Why didn't we get some of their money? That was our land. And yet it's all going to Oxnard. Why is that? My question to you is please reconsider and help the people of El Rio because they really need your help. They're afraid. They're very afraid. $10,000 if they don't connect by December 31st a day. Where are they going to get the money? These people make less than $20,000. These are older people a year. Tell me where they're going to get the cost for these sewer systems that you're enforcing on us. Thank you.
Thank you. Soledad Triono and Victor Noze, and then Lillian Butler.
Good morning. My name is Soledad Treviño.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. It's common. I'm here as part of the El Rio community to ask, no, actually to beg that you reconsider this decision. We are a poor community, and we need the help. We are under state mandated to hook up. This is a devastating blow. There's an enormous amount of low-income families, older people, fixed-income people. This is a devastating blow. Please do not discard us. I also want to say, you can manipulate the language, but this is our money. Zone 2 paid for it. Therefore, we should reap the benefits. Please look elsewhere and leave our money to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vino. Sorry, I thought the V was a U. Victor Noze, and then Lillian Butler.
Members of the board, I appreciate your time this morning. We wanted to turn around, and I'm being the ag rep for Supervisor John Flynn. We had gone through quite a few meetings in the earlier years, even with state representatives for the water quality, mandating that we had to meet this guideline to reduce the nitrates in the water. And El Rio just happens to be geologically located on top of the recharge area that services all of the, the Oxnard Basin. And I think that what we're trying to do is, what's really surprising to me is the fact that we're taking this recharge area, and that's one of the reasons why we fought CalMet from extending all these pits like San Gabriel down to, several hundred feet deep. Was to protect that geologic formation that comes up, and a lot of people don't realize that all these formations come up, off of Los Angeles Ave, where all those flooding grounds are, and all the water goes back down into those, aquifers from that point. CalMet comes back and digs these holes. How do you replace something that's been built with the, the development of this planet? You can't. And I think that one of the things that we're trying to do is preserve the, eliminate the nitrates and then preserve the water quality that services the entire Oxnard Plains area. So it's a major, regional impact. We just happen to be sitting on top of that area. And I've had a lot of complaints from a lot of the farmers because in the earlier going, the residential people were arguing because they were saying the strawberry growers were contributing most of these things. And I says, hey, everybody's guilty. Okay, because you can't put that many septic tanks side by side in a large residential area and expect to not have any of the nitrates go into the ground. So what we're trying to do is follow suit. And to me, when you look at there's only two resources that keep this planet Earth intact with life: the water we drink and the air we breathe. Okay, and to me, there's no question we should be, automatically be protecting that water resource that keeps our survival going. And that's why it came as a total surprise to me that we're arguing here and there, and we're still trying to follow, the guidelines, brought down by the state of California for this water, water quality, mandated water quality, standards. So, I'm hoping that we can turn around and still divert that money back over so we can at least get everybody off that, the septic systems, and then pretty much go from there. So it's a resource that sustains life in the whole area, not only in this whole area, but this, planet of ours. So it's our concern, and it should be a national priority to protect that drinking water and conserve it, as well as our air quality. Okay, so in response to this, I think that the finalization is I'd like to turn around and see if we can't turn around and put the priorities where they are, protect that water resource, and improve the quality and reduce the nitrate level for everybody's, benefit. That's pretty much it, the main
Thank
point
you.
of it. Okay, thank you.
And our final speaker on this is Lillian Butler.
Good morning. My name is Lillian Butler, and I'm a widow, and I'm raising a handicapped son who was born with spina bifida. I don't see where I can get all this money to keep up with what you expect us to do. All I can ask now is just please keep this money in El Rio. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask if Mr. Pratt, or if you could answer the question in terms of how much has the county provided, how much the bill is to the El Rio residents, and what how much are we talking about with Supervisor Flynn as it translates to monthly bills?
I'm not the best person to answer that question. Probably Mr. McCall is.
Oh, I didn't see
My
him
understanding
here.
is it's about $3.80 a month, round numbers, that this would, if all the money were given back, would reduce the monthly bill by. I think that's your question.
Yes, and how much is that bill already?
As I understand it, and again, Mr. McCall.
Mr. Bacall is coming down. Because I know the county has contributed a substantial share already.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnston, Reddy Bacala with the Water and Sanitation Department of Public Works Agency. The total estimated cost for the public sewer system in 2007 dollars is $38 million. Of the $38 million, to date, county has secured $16 million in grants and contributions, including $1.6 million from the Watershed Protection District. At this time, our estimated sewer service charges are $37 per month. That's for ongoing operation and maintenance of the sewer system. And we also have estimated additional $90 per month if county has to secure a low interest loan of about $22 million to make up the gap between $38 million and the $16 million.
How much is that a month? I'm sorry?
$90.
Thank you.
90 plus 37. The total estimated costs at this time are $127 per month. And county and Supervisor Flynn has been looking at securing additional grant monies. Our goal is to continue to look for grant monies as any additional grant money that are secured for the El Rio project will reduce that dollar amount.
So we're talking about, right now, $127 a month they would pay, and the issues brought before us is $3.80 of that, so it'd be like instead of $127, they'd be paying $123 and change.
Well, what Mr. Pratt mentioned about $3.80 is per $1 million loan. So let's say if you were to look at up to $4 million of Watershed Protection District money, and Watershed has previously contributed $1.6 million. So if your board were to reconsider and authorize additional $2.4 million from Watershed, that would translate into 380 times 2.4, whatever that number is.
Reddy, are you saying Watershed Protection District or Zone 2?
Well, I'm just talking about funding. I don't know where the money would come. Your question was what would be the impact of...
How much money are we talking about here?
We are talking about $3.80 per $1 million. And
$2 or something?
Per $1 million. For $1
so
million.
Altogether, in terms of the amount of money we're talking about?
22 times that.
2.4 minus times 380. It's about $8.
$8 out of a $127 bill?
Correct.
Thanks. I appreciate that. it helps me to get some scope and how much the county has already contributed towards this project, $16 million, as I understand.
Wait, may I correct that, Madam Chair?
Did I say something wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a mistake. The county did not contribute the $1.6 million. Zone 2 contributed that, not the county. Excuse my phone. It's
Okay,
I
stand corrected.
Continue. We are trying to get every dollar that we can get. $3 million is a lot of money. It's true, it's not significant when you think of 38 million, but every million counts. Lois Capps and Senator Dianne Feinstein at this point in time maybe have $1 million. We're working hard to secure that. It hasn't happened yet, but it looks good at this point. Some money has come from EPA. We worked our heads off to get 500,000. 500,000, we're talking about 3 million here.
And what I was just trying to get with my questions to figure out how much that the county, the Watershed Protection District, how much grants, how much has gone into this already, how much is left, and what we're talking about with your motion specifically, which is, in relationship That's what I was looking at, and I have a better understanding of that now. Also, as you said, it is complicated. When I look at the $3 million that had to go to Lane Ranch Dam because of the lawsuit and settlement, to me that it's almost not discretionary. We have to pay that. It has to, you know, again, we keep going, well, where is the money going to come from? And to me, it was unfortunate, but that is something that we have a mandate to pay as the way I look at it. Do we have a supervisor for you? You have some
I
questions?
just wanted to make a comment. When already you talked about that we had raised that we as a county, some of the people said we need to do something as a county, and it sounds like the county's worked very diligently to find $16 million, which is a lot of this money, where we didn't have to do that, but we did because we care about the residents, and we're trying to find some, and I know that they're still trying to find additional money if possible. It's tough. But I mean, we have to be careful that people, when they say that we as a county did something, this is a state mandated requirement. We all want good drinking water and everything else. And we have this, you know, what's happening in El Rio. I'm sure there's other parts of the county that have more water requirements. We see stuff happening out in some of the other areas too. We want to be careful. I think that there's maybe other options too. Do we look at, I don't know if you've looked at other options, if there's ways for Oxnard to get involved in, I don't know, annexing of areas that would help some of that. I just think there's a lot of other options that maybe, but I want to make sure that people understood the county has done a lot of work to raise $16 million to help in this situation. One of the things too is the cost of inflation has brought this project to a much higher level than it ever was before. So there's a lot of things working against us, but it gets to a point where we can only do what we can do, and the residents of areas have to pay. It's just part of what we have to live with. I mean, it's very expensive. We want clean water. It costs us all. You know, as Jeff gave us a whole thing on the watershed that we're dealing with, which is good, is another project that's going to cost us all money in every area we can. There's no question, though, that when you go onto sewer from a septic tank, you have a lot more value in your home, that you're going to be getting an increase in value. It's going to cost you, yes, to get that increase in value, but we have to make sure that we understand that part of it too. But I don't want the county, people to think the county is not doing whatever it can do to try to help find some additional money, and I'm sure that they're going to continue to find that too. Thank you.
Supervisor Bennett?
Just want to try to clarify these points. Number one, as Supervisor Foy said, this is a state mandate. It's not the county doing something. It's the state doing it. Number two, people say we have to consider the people, and I think that that's an important reminder. We always have to consider the people, and I want to point out that there are even more people in the city of Fillmore and in Santa Paula and in the surrounding areas that are going to be attaching to their sewer systems that are facing similar problems. They are in Zone 2, and we have given them nothing, right, in terms of moving forward with this. So there is, to the El Rio residents, I think that there is an incentive on some people's part to not have you be aware of what the county has done. If the county had not secured the $16 million, we would be talking about a doubling. Instead of a $90 increase in the monthly sewer bill, it would be double that if the county hadn't gone out and done that. If the county wouldn't stand willing to step forward and make the loan and be able to secure that loan, it would be much more difficult for the residents in this situation. There is a lot that the county is doing for the residents of El Rio, but there's an incentive to not have the residents be aware of that, because then it's for a variety of reasons. But people should be aware that there is not action being, this money, we've given more money to the El Rio residents than certainly we've given the Fillmore and Santa Paula residents. And one of the other things in researching this, Santa Paula and Fillmore residents had originally funded more money into the Watershed Protection District when sort of the funds were being gathered in terms of moving forward. Final thing I would point out is we're having a very selective presentation of the documentation. There are two key phrases that Supervisor Flynn continues to ignore as he doesn't want to respond to them. And one is the language said the board may use. It did not say the board would use or must use. It said may use. And the language said up to $4 million. It didn't say that there was a guarantee of $4 million. It said up to $4 million. Now, every time that Supervisor Foy would bring that up, we just would go on and find some other part of the language. Failure to do that, I think, is a failure to give any real credence to this request here, and it also, I think, misleads the public that's out there listening to this in terms of moving forward. So, anyway, those are my comments, and I think that I'm glad we are willing to give time to listen to this item once again, but I think it's pretty clear where we stand on this item. Thank you.
Okay. Some of this has been said, that the county has stepped up, and in fact, we've done some very creative, staff's done an outstanding job in creatively pulling together a variety of revenue streams for this project, CBDG monies, zone monies, small community grant monies, and they haven't stopped. They're still out there looking and working and trying to find ways to assist with the ongoing needs to complete this project. And we have all had the conversations with the Congress, with our congressional representatives and our state representatives, even, who have a limited role in this. But when you, as mentioned, with Santa Paula and Fillmore, the Santa Clara Valley communities, they're both are under state mandates to bring on new sewer treatment facility plants. And with those state mandates and the projects they're building, they too are looking at sewer rates that are going to go up to $125 a month. And businesses that are facing, and schools in those communities that are facing tripling the cost of their sewer fees a month because of mandates that they're required to bring these new wastewater treatment plants online. They are also in Zone 2. And, we have gone over this repeatedly, and the board has consistently said we will do everything we can to help the El Rio community, that we will continue to work with staff and continue to work with our leadership in trying to identify funds to help the community. Nobody is trying to cheat you or steal from you or move dollars around illegally. Legal counsel has weighed in on this long before today and said what was the action taken was within the jurisdiction and the authorities and was not illegal. So that's what I'll say to you.
Supervisor Flynn.
Yes, we keep mentioning $16 million
Already done public
like it's
comment.
county money. It's not county money. Some portion of a little tiny bit came from CDBG and a couple of other sources, but it's grant money. It's from the state of California. So when we say county money, we don't want to confuse the people. It's grant money for the most part. And we have had several meetings in El Rio. How many times have I mentioned that 16 million came from real hard work of people like Jeff Pratt, Reddy, and Susan Hughes? How many remember me saying that? It's said all the time, and we appreciate that. And then the comment about Fillmore and Santa Paula. They are facing tough times. They are eligible for some of Zone 2 money too, but the supervisor in that district voted to send the money elsewhere. I've been meeting with people from Fillmore. They're very concerned about what they're going to have to pay. Look, this is the unincorporated area. We govern the area. Drinking water, clean drinking water is important, is it not? It's probably the most important subject that we have to deal with for the future of this country. And here we're quibbling over something when 4 million should have gone to the project. Only 1.6 million of Zone 2 money went to this project. 4 million was promised. The issue before the board today is to reconsider the agreement made in 2003. You did not do that. Therefore, the action taken on December 19th, 2006 is null and void. You've got to reconsider your action, your agreement. It's an agreement. An agreement is an agreement. It says nothing about special conditions. Nothing in the agreement. You may have heard that from board members. It's not in the agreement. It should be in the agreement.
Madam
So,
Chair?
Madam Chair, that's the extent of my, sorry, Mr. Ben, I haven't finished yet. That's the extent of my comments. The logic is there. Help these people out here. When we have one single person who came up here and she has a hard time making it, there are a lot of other people out there. Mr. Foy, may I have your attention for a second? When you talk about it makes the property more value. You think that lady out there is interested in that right now? Do you think she's interested in selling her house? Where's she going to go? She's going to have to take all that money to buy another house. So let us help this community. That's my plea to you. Let us help the people in this community get through this project. You have a responsibility to do that. You're directed by the state of California. We go after the state money. We've done a good job there. We need to continue. We are continuing. All the county staff that I mentioned have worked hard. We say that at every board, at every community meeting, and they're very thankful for it. But we got a long ways to go. $3 million bucks, you say that's not very much? That's a contribution.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, we have a couple of calls.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to end the discussion on this topic and move on.
We have a second. You're raising your hand. Do you want to comment to the motion? The motion is to end discussion. And
End the discussion, yes. I would like to amend the motion to reconsider the decision made on 2003 by this board of directors of the Watershed Protection District. You have to reconsider that decision. Otherwise, null and void. December 19th action of 2006 is null and void. You need to reconsider this. It's a simple thing for you to do.
I can.
Okay, and do we have a second to the amendment to the motion? Not seeing a second, the amendment dies. We go back to the main motion. I just have to comment that a couple of different times and on items that you're very passionate with, El Rio, the voting center, you've used the word it's illegal to do that. And to me, that's going a little bit overboard, if you will. I understand you feel strongly about that. We're talking about a resolution with the operative word, we may provide, so it doesn't say you shall provide. I also understand that a lot of money has been given to El Rio. If we can find more money, I think we need to look there. But I just want to say that going overboard and saying this is now what we're doing is illegal, I just have to object to that.
Your objection is
Supervisor
understood.
Foy.
I was going to ask County Council in the comment that was made that we have to reconsider it. That's not true.
That's not right. You don't have to reconsider. There are several things here. Number one, the Watershed Protection District Board took action in December of 2006, not the Board of Supervisors. The board letter today is to the Board of Supervisors of the county. And the suggestion is that you have to reconsider the agreement of 2003. Well, the agreement of 2003 has been largely executed, and reconsideration is when the board wants to completely reverse something that it voted on but has not finally executed. And in this case, the agreement has actually been performed. So you can't reverse what has already been done.
Okay.
How has it been performed?
$1.6 million has been provided by the Watershed Protection District to the county. That's how
Did
it's
the
been
agreement
performed.
state these conditions?
What
The 2003 agreement, did it state the conditions that Jeff was talking about?
Okay, if you will.
No, that was stated by board members.
Okay, but it
And
has to be in the agreement. We have an agreement, do we not, folks from El Rio? They have an agreement.
Again, Supervisor Flynn,
I know.
You obviously think there's something illegal and something has to be reconsidered. Our attorney's telling us
there's something
that
that
is
really
not the
bothers
case.
me here. We have a county council who is saying that the words don't have to be in the agreement. No wonder we have so much
So we do
problems
have,
with
I'm
the
going to go
voting
ahead and
centers
call
and
the
so
question myself. We have a motion, a second on the floor. We have one objection to the motion. Seeing
Not to
no
consider it
other
further?
objections to the motion, pardon?
Not to consider it further.
We're done. And at this point, the motion passes on a 4-1. And I know our clerk would like to take a quick break. I also know we have people from the tolling group that have been waiting and others, so I do want to
Madam
get
Chair.
moving. Yes.
If we could hear the tolling item next, and I know we've got the.
I agree. I
I'd like
agree.
to.
We do have
So,
people waiting
thank
for the
you.
tolling group. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, come back, do the tolling group item, and then go to our 11 o'clock time, I'm certain.
No, those things aren't in the agreement. Why should the agreement
We're coming back from our brief little recess, and we're going to go right to item 26. This is the Resource Management Agency regarding the modification of the biosolids permit for the Tolan landfill. And right after that, we'll then go to our 11 a.m. time certain. So with that, do we have a staff presentation on 26? And if there are cards, thank you.
Morning, I'm Scott Ellis in the Planning Division. This is a report back from actions that you took on September 11th. September 11th, you took 5 actions, as shown on Exhibit Q on the overhead. First thing you did was to deny the appeal by the Tolan Group. The second was you approved the biosolids project. You then directed staff to report back with 2 conditions. One condition had to do with the phasing of dryers 3 and 4, and you directed that we come back with conditions concerning limitations on biosolids trucks in front of the school district. Hopefully you have an Exhibit P. We had submitted Exhibit O, which was our proposed wording for the conditions. However, the school district looked at it and realized that they had changed their schedule, and so they had asked for a change in the condition concerning the biosolids trucks in front of their school. So Exhibit P is now the recommendation. It shifted the biosolids trucks from 11:30 to 12 to 12:30 to 1 o'clock. I would like to report that all 3 interested parties, VRSD, the Tolan Group, and the school district, have reviewed all of the conditions, and they accept all of the conditions. I'm not sure anybody is happy with all the conditions, but all 3 parties have accepted them. Consequently, the staff recommendation is that you modify your 9/11 approval of the biosolids project and amend it by adoption of Exhibit P. That concludes the staff presentation, unless there are any questions.
Are there any questions at this point? It's nice to see that everybody agrees with the conditions. And of the comment cards that I do have, I have one that for answering questions only. Someone else doesn't feel the need to speak unless VRSD opposes the conditions, but we understand they support the conditions. And that gets me down to 2 cards. And this is Anita Nelson and Gordon Kimball. Did you want to speak?
Good morning, Chairperson Parks, supervisors, and Mr. Johnson. Mr. Kimball will probably not be speaking. We've all been sort of moving in and out all morning with very harried schedules too. So I'll just be addressing you this morning, and it's just, all we really want to say, and I think I can say I'm representing the entire group, that we want to thank you for your ongoing attention to this matter. And we remain convinced that it is the wrong project in the wrong place at the wrong time. With that said, we are genuinely appreciative of your willingness to put together conditions that we feel will help hold the VRSD accountable to its responsibilities, not only to the public's well-being, but to the well-being of the spectacular, fragile, and irreplaceable environment in which they work. We also remain committed and will remain vigilant in our pursuit of a broader regional dialogue. Such a dialogue would seek the counsel of independent experts and would involve, rather than merely inform, Ventura County citizens. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I would just comment, as you look through the history of this particular project before us, that your input and your group's input has led to several conditions, not only here at the Board of Supervisors, but also at the Planning Commission, and I would submit that as a result, the project is a better one. At this time, this is a public hearing, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to put forward the motion to adopt the recommended actions and just thank the board, thank VRSD, thank the Tolan Group. I know that, as was said by Mr. Ellison, not everyone's 100% happy, but everyone got a piece of the loaf of bread. And I'll say to the board a couple of things. One, Caltrans has sent a letter that they are going to work with the school district and the school to see what they can do to further protect that school and the students and parents for their operational hours. Hearing this morning of a major lawsuit settled against Caltrans on the 126, and I know an interest of the mayors of the cities to look at a hard median in the center of the 126, that there may be changes on this roadway anyway over the next few years. The comment made by Mrs. Nelson regarding regional solutions, I certainly have committed to and will continue to look at ways we can bring information into our county to have regional dialogue on the long-term solutions on management of biosolids through VCOG, and with the RSD, and with Simi Valley Waste Management and that landfill. Because at the end of the day, we must do that, not just for biosolids, but frankly for the long-term management of our waste stream, because we know there is a shelf life for the Tolan project, and there is a shelf life for all landfills. So I appreciate the work that's been done, the compromise, and put forward a motion to adopt the approved additional conditions on this project.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Seeing no objections, that passes.
I'd just like to make one quick comment. I just want to compliment Supervisor Long. I know you're in the middle of a lot of challenges. And I think the comments made by you today are really classy in terms of the way you guys handle yourself at this point in time. I mean, instead of saying, let's move forward now, a decision's been made and stuff. And so good luck to everybody as we move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll go on to our 11 a.m. study session. Bringing back the non-binding agreement with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And we have Sheriff Brooks back with us too.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnson, Bob Brooks, Sheriff. I had intended to come back with a recommendation that your board support a resolution to support the non-binding agreement to cooperate with CDCR. I'm now asking that you postpone that decision. Supervisor Bennett asked for postponement. That was a very good idea. Things keep changing as we go along. What we're looking at now in terms of time frame with discussions with CDCR staff yesterday and today, they're still changing the rules of engagement over this issue. Right now, what they're saying is that the initial letter that we submitted as a department is enough to keep us in play for jail construction funding down the line. They will require resolutions from governmental bodies when the RFPs are out and submissions are made. They need to be accompanied with a resolution. Right now, we're looking at a time frame of an October 12th regional meeting. November 1st, potentially they'll have a draft RFP. It'll go back to counties for comment and revision, go back to the state, may come back to us later in November, possibly even in December, and then there'll be a deadline for actual submissions. So we're probably at least a couple months away from needing a resolution. My recommendation is that we don't adopt one prematurely, because we may have to include things later and have to revise our resolution and do it again. So we'd rather wait until we have all the information, until we're closer to the deadline.
Supervisor Long? Madam Chair, if I might. And Sheriff, my apologies. As you know, I participated in the first ESC meeting yesterday, the Executive Steering Committee, and I have materials I brought for the board, and I'll provide them to you also and give you right now the update on what happened, of which I know your team has probably already heard parts of it, because there was quite an attendance up there for the Executive Steering Committee. And it's true, we work through basically the parameters for the RFPs and the distribution of funds based on size of county for urban, suburban, and rural. And we're in that urban category, and as you know, there's $750 million to be let in these funds, of which the 600 million is going to be let to the urban counties. So that was one of the parameters. The other addressed points given for the variety, for the 9 criteria for the RFP that's going to be drafted. But what caused me concern is both there's a letter from to the chair of the Executive Steering Committee, Sheriff Penrod, that was provided to our committee yesterday, and I'll send that around and certainly provide you a copy. You may have already seen it. And it does raise some of those questions about when is it necessary to have a resolution put forth? At what point do you enter into, if you're going to compete for the RFP for the jail bond funding, and what the understandings must be in putting forward that resolution. And clearly the issue, I think, for us is the reentry component of this, and whether or not we use the carrot of the reentry side of it, and what does that mean, and how do we evaluate that. And the October 12th conference will give us lots of that information. Anywhere from 200 to 500 beds is being looked at for the typical reentry facility. And there is a goal, not a goal, it's a mandate that we have to, at the end of the day, we being the Executive Steering Committee, be able to count the beds that come as a result of the RFP so that we achieve the, looking for my paper, the 6,000 bed count. 4,000 bed count, I'm sorry, for the jails, and 2,000 for the reentry. The other piece that was passed out yesterday came from the under AB 900 the legislation related to the mental health services for the parolee and ex-offender population. I provide that to you. That gave us pause also, or certainly raises questions that the team needs to talk about, because one of the clear things it says at the closure of this and the evaluation of services, it's saying that you will be given points in the RFP if you provide these enhanced services at the local level. But at the close of that, it says that the evaluation of the services offered by a county will not be a factor in the jail construction proposal evaluation and funding award process. So staff took that to mean that they won't evaluate what kind of programs you're going to offer. You're just going to evaluate that you're going to offer programs, and that's pretty nebulous. What does that mean, and what does that cost? And also, there's absolutely no money tied to that component of it yet. So, and as the sheriff said, we're now looking at a bidders conference no sooner than January of 2008, and awarding of contracts probably no sooner than August of 2008. So there's time to continue to do work on this. I still believe there's value in being at the table. The competition is going to be tough. The Executive Steering Board agreed yesterday that there would be $600 million set aside for urban counties, no greater than $125 million granted to any one county. So, and there are 6 urban counties that are under court-ordered caps that are going to be in the competition on this, I expect. So that doesn't say we shouldn't be there and do it, because we have to in the interest of what we need in our county. But that's a report from that committee work. It was interesting to go through it, so I hope
we
that's
have
helpful.
a couple of questions here. Supervisor Bennett and Flynn.
Thank you. And I appreciate asking for the delay, and now you're asking for the delay in the situation that we're in at this point in time.
Sounded like a good idea after you did it, so I
that's right. My question that I would just like to ask of both the CEO and the sheriff, and I think Supervisor Long also. So I just think it's just really healthy for us to right up front recognize the sheriff's a separately elected person. The sheriff has issues that the sheriff's going to be focused on. The board has issues that we need to be focused on. There's a tremendous amount of overlap, but there are certain things that will be, long range. We'll be looking at more than the sheriff and the sheriff will be looking at. And there's a great collegial relationship right now. I just want to make sure that all of the parties are represented properly as any either negotiations, discussions, et cetera, take place. And so even though we're not taking action today, it seems like we might want to make sure we give direction about those conversations. So I want to start with you and ask you, how can we sort of ensure that these combinations of elected officials, make sure that we stay in the overlap zone of where we're all in real agreement as we move forward. And then I'm going to ask the sheriff and supervisor.
Well, I think that we're doing it and we can do it, but if your concern is that you see how it all comes together, there's only one way to assure of that, and I think it's all part of what the state's asking when they say it has to be an adopted resolution by the board. So your board should ask for periodic updates and have the ultimate authority to make the deal. Right now, I guess it's about probation, sheriff's office, our offices are all working pretty closely together. Is there anybody else who needs to be involved in it?
Yeah, at this stage, it's because we're not talking about specific sites, construction projects. There will be many other agencies involved as we get further down the line, but just deciding whether to enter into a non-binding agreement is pretty much restricted to those three entities.
And do you have any insights you just want to offer in response to my raising that?
Well, I think the minute that we get close to an RFP and a formal resolution, then we're going to need the involvement of all the support agencies, GSA and information technology and the cities and other people that may have a stake in this. Right now, there's nothing for them to really weigh in on because it's so far down the road. We haven't even decided if we're going to sign that agreement. So until we get to that point and we see that it's worth pursuing and pursuing in more specificity, I think we're probably right-sized for it.
So, and are we at the table with the right agreement from your perspective, and that this is sort of we're moving as a team, and only where we're in agreement between probation
Absolutely.
and sheriff and
I think,
CEO?
I think our goals are in concert. We're obviously concerned about overcrowding and jail construction. We're worried about the cost of that and the cost of staffing. But that's and I'm the objective of the CEO and the board as well. So we don't have any conflicts in terms of their participation.
And Supervisor Long, that you feel like we're structured properly and we're
well. At some point, we must, if we're going to be competitive, and there are points given for both the reentry component and the mental health services component, we need to have the behavioral health or the experts at the table to discuss that piece with us. On the mental health services, again, the document I provided gives you further information on clearly calling out what they're looking for in the way of those enhanced mental health services. Not just what we're doing today, but what would we, and as I said, and also it has no money tied to it at this point. And on the reentry piece, it clearly calls out that on submittal of the RFP, you have to identify a reentry planning team for the purpose of taking responsibility for proposing potential sites for location of a state reentry facility. There's very prescribed pieces that we would have to commit to.
Okay, thank you very much.
Supervisor Flynn, you have a question?
I just wanted to ask if has a decision been made that, or is it still open, that the state will have the counties run this reentry program and be responsible for it? That decision has been made.
No, there has not been a decision made. My preference is that the state run the reentry facility for a number of different reasons. It creates a tremendous amount of conflicts, and a lot of the concerns related to the state actually paying their cost, having conflicts about how to operate a correctional facility, go away if they're staffing and operating it. So our preference is that we'd all work together to help them find a spot, identify the local services and the combination of behavioral health and the other services, but that they operate it. It's a nightmare once we try to co-operate a facility that they have somewhat ownership in. I'd rather avoid that if possible.
But that hasn't been decided for sure yet. And I think I agree with your comments that you made about that. But we would still play a role, whether it's state.
Absolutely, they need our cooperation to make it happen. They're looking for local participation at every level. We have to limit what that participation will be. They'd like us to do all of it if we could. We want to see it happen if it's going to benefit the county in the overall perspective, though.
Thank you.
Is the assumption that those that are under state orders on crowding would be given priority?
it's an assumption. They haven't stated that, but a lot of things are unstated, as Supervisor Long has kind of mentioned, where it's a wink and a nod, and it's not in paper anywhere, and nobody would take ownership. But it's something that the committee that actually makes decisions about distribution of the fund will have to weigh.
Okay.
And I would think they would take a favorable status.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Supervisor.
it is my read that the state is asking the county on the reentry component to assist with the siting and the location, the planning of it, blah, 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 but it implies here that they intend to be the runners of the facility, and I agree with you that that would something we'd want to cement in any agreement we'd enter into. And there was discussion about whether to give preference to those counties that have caps, and it was interesting as to how, in fact, we're at a capacity where if we were to self-impose a cap, that would put us in the mix of those 12 counties that have self-imposed caps. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the decision was to not do it based on caps, but to give points based on need, either project describing what the need is, and also on that you actually add real beds to, there's a net gain of beds. So you can't just move some shells around on it. So those are the big point getters.
At this time, then, the motion would be to continue this to when you have more information. Is that right?
Yes, we'll come back to you when that date approaches.
Okay. All right, so do we have a motion to go ahead? Thank you. And is there a second to that motion? Yes, motion and a second. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that completes that item, and unanimously approved. We'll go on to our next agenda item. I believe we're to Policy Matter 23, and it's a recommendation from Supervisor Bennett.
Yes, let's move the appointments.
Motion is second to appoint Janet Barron to the Commission for Women. Seeing no objection, that passes. The next item is item 24, and Supervisor Foy's recommendation.
Yes, just to move this to put Mrs. Lipsky on the Commission for Women. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Motion and a second on item 24. Seeing no objection, that passes. Now we'll go on to item 25 with our Public Works Agency. And this is regarding amendments to leases. Hello, Mr. Coons.
Chair, members of the board, Mr. Johnston. This is in follow-up to two items that I've brought before you in this past month and told you I'd be coming back with a policy for the board to consider. This has been a practice that's been going on for over 30 years. We've researched and we have not found a board policy, so I'm bringing it before the board today to have the board consider approving the recommended action of limiting the Director of Public Works Authority to a 10% modification as detailed in here in this item. There are other checks and balances that are in practice that will continue as well. And they're on the bottom of the second page, where it is reviewed by the Facilities Planning Group. Also, the agency director that's looking to do the change in the lease and the CEO's office are all involved in reviews before this would be consummated. If there's any questions, I'd be pleased to respond.
Okay, who first?
Move the recommendation.
I think
Yeah,
I have a question before we do the motion.
I think it's a good idea. What was our largest lease? So this 10% would be what?
Probably the healthcare agency, the recent one that we have in Simi Valley. 10% of that lease would not exceed $80,000.
Okay.
In relationship to what the Public Works Director's authority is in purchasing, there's around $100,000.
Right. So it'd be under that typical.
It would be less than that,
Right.
within
Okay.
the 10%.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question.
I just wonder,
You have more.
do you have any comments on that? Does that do anything? No comments? Okay.
As I see, there are two situations when you would allow for this, the director to have that purchasing authority, and one was the 10% cap in regarding rental rates. The second one, the one I have a question about, 2A, when space is added to the leased premises with increased costs for increased square footage, I think about, for example, the Transportation Commission was looking for offices, and we could end up increasing it to double the size, and maybe leasing out, or, there's all these other options. To me, this is rather open-ended, that just when a space is added to the lease premises, you could end up with 50% more space and that never coming to the board. So I'm just wondering if there's it seems more prudent to have a cap, for example, when expansion is less than a certain percentage, like less than 40%.
I believe that would be covered also in the 10% limit on the amount of the lease that would be able to be done in 1 year.
Oh, I see. So the overriding principle is just the item 1. So 2 is almost a subset of 1.
It's an example of that, yes.
Okay. Then I want to make sure that that is reflected, because it's not as I read it in the staff report. So I want to make sure that items 2, A, and B are as long as it's within 10% of the current market price. Then.
Correct. All right.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on this? Okay. Then I would go ahead and move the recommendation with the provision that 10% is the maximum even for item 2 on this report.
Second.
Motion is second. Seeing no objections, that passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think that concludes the everything except for the correspondence agenda. Motion is second to approve the correspondence agenda. At this point, then, we're going to go to closed session. Do you anticipate an announcement?
There might be an announcement on number 22.
There may be an announcement. And so if there is, we will come back into open session with that announcement. Do I understand we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting, and then we'll have a special meeting at 1:30? Is that correct? Okay. So
that's correct.
Unless there is an announcement, we're going to adjourn from this closed session. Thank you.